Before this video starts, we're also going to do a bit of fixing right here. That shouldn't be static. Like, it shouldn't be. So get rid of all these static calls, because that's the only thing that should be static. Like, there's nothing should be static, I'm trying to say. Anyways, on to the video. Hey guys, AP here, and today we are going to be adding input to our window class. So right now we just have a window and it counts the frames and it shows the frames up in our title, but we can't really control, like I'm spamming the keyboard right now, I'm clicking everywhere, there's no way to control it. So instead of doing the way I was doing it last tutorial, where I just had a bunch of input or a bunch of functions, and then had the window store of it, it really wasn't efficient because I looked into the GFL documents and it says that the functions are just another step to get to what we're going to implement today, which are callbacks. And so what a callback is basically every time you do an event, which GFL has a list of them, there's a lot of them. So if every time you do an event, it goes to that callback, or it goes to nothing if there's no callback. So we're going to be adding callbacks so we can actually use those events to control our window. So the first thing we need to do is in our engine.io package, we need to create a new class called input. So this is where all the inputs going to happen, or where all the input callbacks are going to go. So in here, we're going to need a few variables, and one of them is obviously going to be, or three of them obviously are going to be the callbacks. So we need public void, or we're actually going to make it private and just use getters. Private, and they're going to be GFL key callback, and we're just going to say keyboard. And so if we import that, save, and then import that, it's a bit laggy. Oh, it's not responding. That is no good. I also want to mention thank you to Void Be Wicca 819 for helping me realize that you can actually put more than one callback in a class. So this is my second time doing the video because I forgot about that. So anyways, yeah, so thank you to him. He's on my Discord, he's one of my mods. Much love to him, basically. I'm going to put this before I actually do the tutorial because he actually needs the credit, because when I first did it, I used callbacks, but I didn't really use callbacks. So thank you to him, and yeah, so on to the tutorial. Okay, I'm back. It's finally started to do stuff. So after we get the keyboard variable, I'm just going to copy and paste this two more times and change this from GFL mouse to cursor pause, which stands for position. We're just going to say this is mouse move. So this basically gets our X's and Y's. So import that, or for the X and Y for our mouse, and then we need GFLW mouse button callback, and we're just going to call this mouse buttons. And so what this is it gets when we click. So like right now I'm clicking, we could click the middle one, we could click the right one. It basically that's what all these are for. Keyboard, mouse move, mouse buttons. Simple enough. So, and now we need to actually initialize it. So when we create the input class, which is going to be a static class. So in our constructor class or function, it's called a function. So in it, we need to actually initialize all three of these callbacks. So to do that, we need to say keyboard is equal to new GFW key callback. And to actually say what the callback is, we need to add the invoke method, which I'm just going to do here. So the invoke is basically every time you click on a keyboard or hit a button or the mouse is moved, it runs this function. And so it has a few arguments. The first one, and since I don't have any documentation, it's just going to say arg1 through 4. So I'm just going to list it off for you. So the first one is window, because it's a long, and we need to know which window we're actually calling it to. The second one is the key we're pressing. The third one is the scan code. The or the fourth one is the action, and then the last one is mods. So for right now, we're going to be using the key, we're going to be using the key and the action. So when we create that, we actually want to store which key is pressed and whether it's pressed or released. So using these two. And so now I think we can use a array for that. So we're going to say private Boolean array. I'll just say keys, and that's equal to a new Boolean array with a length of, GFL. GFW has a built-in variable to show how many keys it can actually support. So GFW, it's called GFLW key last. So this gets all of it, and then import GFW. So this gets all the keys supported by GFLW, and the keys is that long. Just in case, like, it's a different keyboard for everyone, it can actually support it, hopefully. And so we're going to do the same for buttons. So mouse buttons, or just say buttons. We don't need to say mouse buttons because buttons is equal to a new Boolean, but instead of key, we're going to do GFW mouse button last. So I think this is like 512, and this is like, what would this be? This would be like 16. I don't know. It's somewhere around that. So anyways, we have a few callbacks, and we have some arrays to store all the button presses. And then we also need to store the mouse X and mouse Y. So private double mouse X and then mouse Y. And so now, private. And so now that we did that, we can just actually store them in here. So the first thing we need to do is we need to say whether or not the key is pressed or not. So we're going to say, I'm saying that a lot. We're going to type, let's say that instead. Dang it! So keys of the index of key, because key is an integer, we're going to say, man, I say a lot. We're going to say, I can't even stop saying it. Alright. So we're going to type whether or not the action is a press or is it a release. And so action is an integer. So since action is an integer, we can't just plug in a straight Boolean. So we have to basically wrap it around in an equal sign. So action is not equal to, and then there's a variable for this, GFW.GFW release. So GFW release is -1 basically. So if action is not equal to that, that means if it's equal to 1, which is a press, that means it will return to true, and then it'll say that key is down, so it's true. And then it's the same for opposite. Well, that's a contradiction. Anyways, so now that we have the keyboard, that's basically all we're doing for the keyboard. We need to do this for the mouse move and the mouse buttons. So for mouse move, we just say mouse move, and instead of a key callback, we're saying cursor position. And these have different conditions. It only has 3, and they are the window, of course, and then the X position, which is a double, and then the Y position, which is also a double. So I'm doing that so I can just say mouse X is equal to those. So mouse X is equal to X position, and mouse Y is equal to Y position. So now that we did that, we're going to move on to our mouse buttons. And we need to say mouse button callback, and this one has 4 of them. The fourth one, it has no more scan code. It has the same as the keyboard, just without a scan code. So now that we did that, we can say buttons, buttons of I'm just going to call this button. So the index of button is going to be equal to action is not equal to release. These can be used simultaneously. So now that we do that, we can actually use some getters and setters to get these and actually make them useful. So I'm just going to go to source, and this is a quick way to get getters and setters. Generate getters and setters. Let me just right click it and do it from there. Alright, right click, source, generate getters and setters. So a little menu will pop up, and it'll say which ones do you want. You can select all, like if you want getters and setters for all of them, but I'm going to say select getters, and we don't want the buttons and we don't want the keyboards. We're going to do different functions for those. Oh wait, no, it's key that we don't want. On fix that. There we go. So now that we do that, we need to say generate, and we should have a lot of variables that we can use. So get mouse X, get mouse Y, get keyboard, mouse move, and mouse buttons. So I'm just going to say callback after this, so it'll be more specific, and then copy that, paste. Alright, so now with that, we can just say in our window, to actually add the callbacks to the window. So after we make the context current, we need to say glfw.glfw set keyboard callback, or key callback, the window, and then the callback function, which is going to be new input, and then wait, that's not okay. Oh, we have to actually set input. Dang it! So public input, and so now that's created. We actually need to create it in the create. So after we initialize glfw, so right here, when you say input is equal to new input. So now that we have created it, all of the callbacks are initialized. So now after we do that, we can say input.get keyboard callback. And we need to do the same for the other two. So instead of set key callback, set cursor position callback, and then set mouse button callback, and we can say get mouse move callback, and get mouse button callback. Okay, so now that we get the callback set, before we actually run this and test it out, I want to actually have a function that gets rid of the callbacks after we're done. So to actually do that, we need to say public void destroy, basically destroy, and then in here we need to say keyboard, or whatever you called your we're gonna go through here and say keyboard.free. So what this does is after it just gets rid of it. This gets cleared. There's no more callback anymore. So we're gonna do the same for the other two, and now that we have done that, we can actually test it. So in here, well, actually we need to get, since it's private, we actually have functions to get the key and mouse. We already got the mouse X, but we need the mouse buttons. So in here we need to say public, and then I'm going to actually make this static so we don't have to create a new input every time we want to use it. So public static, let's just say, what does this return? Returns a boolean, yeah. And then we're going to say is key down, and then it's going to return, and we're going to have an argument for a key, so int key. So basically this just returns is the key down, whether or not the keyboard or the key at the certain index is true or not. So if it is true, then return true. If it's not, then it'll return false. So return keys of key. And we're going to do the same for mouse button. So copy that and just say, ooh. Oh yeah, we have to change those to static as well. Static. We might also want to change this to static. Alright, and now I need to change this to just a lot of static, because I don't want to create a new input class every single time. So boom, static, and then we have to say is button down, and say button return buttons of button. So now that we have all these static functions, we can actually use this in our main program. So now that we have the input, we need to do in right here, we're going to actually do an example of this that's actually practical. Every time we press the escape button, we want to exit the window. So we can also just call input. Well, we don't have an input. Dang it. We have to make that static as well. where is it? Static. Static. Or we can actually, dang it, that'll make it all static. You know what? I'm just gonna make a function in the window class that does it. So just public void destroy. Just say input dot destroy. So after our while loop, which basically after the while loop window should close, we should actually close the window. So we should say window dot, is it destroy? It's destroy. So it destroys all of it. We should probably terminate GLFW here as well. That's not our window class. So GLFW dot GLFW terminate. And we can say GLFW dot GLFW close. Set window should close, basically. Is it destroy window? Well, we can also add that, I think. So GLFW destroy window. There we go. So now we actually put our destroy function to use. So after our while loop, which is our main loop, we should destroy the window. So there we go. So to actually put this to use, we need to create ourselves practical use for the keyboard. Every time we press escape, it should close the window. So to do that, we should say if input, since we made it static, it should work. If input dot is key down, and then the key is going to be, what is it, glfw dot glfw escape or key escape. Yeah, key escape. Then we should say return. So what return does is it just breaks us out of this while loop. And to prove that's working, let's run the window. As you can see, nothing's wrong. If I press escape, it gets out of it. So the next thing we have to do, or just for testing purposes, we're going to say every time we press the key, or not the key, the mouse, we get the mouse position of it. So I'm just going to do that in our update function. If input dot is button down, and then whatever glfw dot glfw mouse button left, that means that we should get the mouse Y. Actually, I'm just going to make this one line for simplicity's sake. System dot out dot print line, and then whatever our string is going to be. So x, which is going to be our mouse x plus input crap. Input dot get mouse x, and plus some commas. Input dot get mouse y, and we should say y. So basically, what happens is every time we click down the left button on our window, it should give us the x and y position of that window. So let's run it and see if that works. Let's get the console showing. So say we click here. Well, some formatting issues, but say we click up here, we should get 0, 0. There we go, 0, 0. And we can basically click anywhere we want and we get the mouse position. And if we do that, we can actually get the mouse position. And there we go, it's all working. So yeah, there is another optional thing we can do, is we can make it fire only once. But I'm not going to do that because why would we? I'm just going to make it every time we press the button, it's going to fire it, which I don't think is a bad problem. Now, it would be a bad problem if you're using something else to run the game, aka like a scripting language, because then that script will run every single frame that button is pressed down, and that's not really good. That's not really good for performance. But since we're running it natively, aka in our main loop, it should be good. So yeah, that is it for our input tutorial. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you want to leave a like, that would really help. If you also want to subscribe, that will also really help. I think the next tutorial would be finishing up the window class, aka getting all the like this optional stuff like full screen and window sharing. Get that all finished up and maybe add like cursors or all that. But I don't know. Let's see where it is. Anyways, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial. Bye.